Hey, Rolling 20 fans, this is G, and I'm here to tell you today about a new sponsor for our show, Casey's Irish Pub. This is an honest-to-God Boston or Chicago-style Irish pub located in downtown Los Angeles. They serve cooked food, 11 kinds of beer, and 49 different Irish whiskeys from 3 different distilleries. What does that mean? That means if you're looking for a good drink during a Los Angeles convention, you don't have to go far. If you're headed to Los Angeles for E3, Kamikaze, Anime Expo, the Los Angeles Car Show, or one of the hundreds of events happening near the Staples Center, then a good meal and a glass of Guinness is just a short walk away. Jeremy, the loud guy who won't shut up when we do our own podcast, he actually ate there during the last Anime Expo, and he said this. Forgive me if I don't sound like the guy. I went to Casey's Pub looking for a place to bring people for a good night of food and found it when I was driving people on my way back to the Los Angeles Convention Center. We went back and I had the best steak pot pie in my life down there. My wife had a good whiskey to sip, and 8 of us had fun talking and eating in a place that looked like it belonged in a movie. Casey's just a couple of blocks from the Westin Bonaventure. That means it's close to one of Anime Expo's own shuttle stops. We're even hosting a photo shoot there during the 2014 Anime Expo. If you want more details on that, email us at mspfreight@yahoo.com. Hey, so do yourself a favor. And don't stock up on bad beer and try to mix something sitting at the desk of your hotel room. Ride the elevator, get off at the Bonaventure, and walk to Casey's Irish Pub to get some drinks by their bartenders. Make some new memories and have some fun. We want to see you there.
Hello everybody, this is Anthony Beyond from Mission Start Podcast, and we're back from a week off of the Conover to bring you a new episode of the Conover. And this week we're talking about everything Wondercon, and the men who went to go and investigate or cover the event was Jeremy and Steve.
Yo.
Hey.
I won't say formally, but these guys also have their own podcast at the Rolling 20s. You should go check out when you have the time on our website. Also on iTunes and Stitcher. But yeah, we've been on. So you guys went to WonderCon, I believe, 2 weeks ago? Week and a half ago?
Almost 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. So you guys ventured off into the land of WonderCon. My first question is, how was it?
I had a lot of fun.
It was very interesting watching his reactions. He has not been there since 2006.
Yeah, well,
When I say that, I mean
hotel
in Anaheim. No, you haven't been to the hotel since 1999. I know that because I arranged your hotel stays.
right.
So Steve, how was it like for you coming back? Like, what was it like, the transformation from like what you saw back then to what you saw now?
To be honest, I felt really old because I realized how crappy my memory has become. But yeah, it was just a lot more updated. Jeremy was pointing out a lot of things, and I was like, oh yeah, now I remember that. But totally changed the street layout at a certain area, and the hotels had undergone major overhauls in looks and everything. Not so much actual structural changes or anything. Obviously, they didn't really need that, but yeah, it was interesting.
The most hilarious point where we figured out how long it had been since he was there, we had a couple of younger roommates. I think they were like 18 and 17 or 18 and 16, and the older one asked, "So, how long has it been since you guys have been here?" And I looked at the guy and he said, "Well, it's been..." And Steve looks at my face as I'm trying to find the right word. He says, "Yes, you do mean decades."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, good Lord, that was like 4 years after I should have graduated high school.
Yeah.
What was their look when you told them? It's like, oh, I've been here. I've, been a while, like decades. Like,
It was about the look you'd expect from a couple of younger fans. Oh my God, they're old.
Didn't help that I was like hauling out my BiPAP and yeah. Gotta be on a breather.
Funny.
Yeah, they're hauling out like cup ramen and canned stuff to eat, and here we are with a couple bananas and oranges and like fizz water and all this shit.
Awesome.
Granola bars for them.
When I pulled out a bag of Starburst jelly beans, I said, "Oh, thank God, it's not going to be one of those trips."
So what were the first things you guys went and go check out when you were there?
Breakfast. No, seriously, we kind of got there, checked into the hotel, and then was like, well, we went over to the convention center, checked the line, practically non-existent. Plus, we had a pretty good feeling since it was one of those Comic-Con run events, and they always do so well. So we just went and had breakfast, came back, and the line had grown, I don't know, maybe double the size. How long did we even stand in line, Jay?
Let's see. You got there at roughly 9. I had to go to the hotel for something, and then I had to double back to the restaurant because I got my sunglasses. At 10, they brought us inside the building to wait, to have the registration line wait inside the hall.
Right.
And then when they opened the registration line at 10:30, that's when the waiting just entirely stopped.
Yeah, I mean, like, the first 2 rows of people were pretty much instantaneously through, and we were just in the second row, so it was like, I don't know, what, 7 minutes maybe?
I was guessing closer to 8, but yeah, that's about all the time it took for the 2 of us to get badges, and only one of us had a printout. This includes a trip to the help desk.
Yeah, that's true. I totally spaced. I thought that Jeremy had my registration, and he was like, no, I gave it to you at the house the week before, and I was like, oh, crap. And immediately found a guy, and he's like, oh, you just need to go to the help desk, fight the stream, and I walked over to the help desk. They said, oh, do you have your email? Yeah, okay, there you go. I mean, the guy that told me to go to the help desk was just like, you don't have a smartphone? What's wrong with you? They could have handled it that way, just gone into my email and whatnot. But yeah, no, the help desk was just like, give them my email address, and boom, it was done. A minute, and they gave me the badge there. I didn't even have to go back to anybody.
Awesome. So it seems like there wasn't really much of a wait line at all for registration.
No.
Yeah,
by the time we were done with the
Comic-Con job. This is the normal Comic-Con job, man. I mean, it seemed like even though they had just started processing people, there was constantly individuals waving signs going, over here, over here. I don't know if they have some kind of quota or what, but they're just way too energetic to get you out and moving.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
I mean, by the time we were done at the help desk, they were already pulling the third row through, so... I have a feeling it probably got most people processed in, a couple of hours. And then some people had ended up queuing up as soon as they got registered for the line for the hall, but we didn't really bother with that.
Yeah, we decided to do some wandering because I had some business just before the hall opened, and unfortunately I have an aggressive body clock. When I'm supposed to be somewhere, somehow my brain wakes me up about 2.5 hours early. So that means about 4:45, suddenly Steve has the lights turned on like blaring bright, and just said, okay, we're ready to go. And he just looks at me underneath that BiPAP as if to say, you're a fucking moron.
Yeah, after we got registered, I went back to the hotel room and had a nap.
That's great. So just a curiosity, what were some of the more popular things that people were interested being there? Like, was there a particular crowd that was more interested in going to a certain panel or a certain event, or was it kind of like a mix of there wasn't like a particular huge crowd going to one thing to another?
Yeah, the cosplay was pretty prevalent, but lots of groups and everything.
Well, he was asking about the panels, and I can't think of any individual panel that caused people to just gravitate in any direction. There were a couple things in the arena. I think probably the most popular thing I heard people whispering about was the screening of the animated Son of Batman feature, but even then, it wasn't overriding. Everybody seemed to have their own individual agendas, and I would say the most popular thing going on were people trying to get signatures from Babs Tarr, the current artist on the Batgirl series.
Yeah.
Oh shit, she was there?
Yeah, she had her own table in Artist Alley, and as soon as the doors opened, there was always a line at least 6 people deep waiting for her to get to her table.
Nice. Oh shit. Damn.
Yeah. Panel-wise, I didn't really see huge long lines. There was average attendance to pretty much every panel that I went to, but it wasn't like, oh crap, no seating room or anything like that. And they were...
It also wasn't Comic-Con. Yeah, it also wasn't Comic-Con rigid. At Comic-Con, the same company, when a panel starts, they close the doors. Nobody's getting in there. Nobody's getting in until the panel is over, basically.
Yeah, and they were telling me, oh, well, you can go in and sit down if you want to. And I'm like, no, I didn't really want to be rude and interrupt somebody, so I just kind of waited outside the door. But, yeah, they were really cool about it.
I'd say it goes along with what Steve and I have discussed about Comic-Con's MO since he's finally been to the big show and now he's been to this. Comic-Con always seems to plan as if the year they're entering into is going to have growth. They're always planning for the next step. They don't sit on their laurels and hope that things are just as good as next year, and if not, they'll fix it next year. They want it fixed now.
Yeah. Now, if possible. If not, then definitely go on a list for, the next time.
Yeah.
They even had the entire bottom floor of the convention center, and they didn't even use it all.
He's right. They actually used all 4 halls this year. The first hall was all registration lines and a line for the arena. And in the B hall is when Artist Alley started, and even then I think it was about a third of the way through. And then after you get through B, from C to D is the exhibit hall itself, all the way through to the last half of Hall D, which was just kind of empty float space for anybody who was looking for a breather without going outside.
Yeah, I think they had a station set up over there for a couple of cosplay picture locations and so forth. But other than that, it was, just empty. But it left it feeling a lot less crowded, I think, just because of that. It wasn't like they had all the booths all spread out, so you had to, wander through everywhere. It was, nice and contained, but still allowed for a lot of movement.
Yeah, and even though they only needed half of Hall D, it's not like they decided to skimp on the cost and just shove everyone into a smaller space. They paid the money. They made use of what space they felt they needed.
Okay, interesting. It's good to hear, though, too, at the same time. So, but the other thing I wanted to ask was, because it's funny, I asked Jeremy this prior to the convention starting. I wasn't sure if the predictions were correct, but Jeremy, was your predictions correct about the cosplays about this WonderCon?
Steve, to let you know, he asked me in a pregame what costumes I thought would be most prevalent, and my 2 answers as far as male were Deadpool and female were Harley Quinn. Tell him how I did.
Yeah. I mean, other than going for the safe bet, what a chicken. No. There were tons of Deadpools. There were tons of Harley Quinns. But...
Sorry, you told me I wasn't going to find buttloads of Animal Man, okay?
But we did see that really cool looking Wheeljack. That was my my cool costume of the weekend.
Yeah. I noticed Abby Normal out of costume for once. I actually recognized her without a costume, which is just really unusual for me. But I saw this person who was taller than me walking the other direction in a shirt and a skirt, and her face looked really familiar. So it's like in my mind's eye, I kind of went through that scene in Predator 2 where the Predator's changing his visions all the time, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Except for costumes.
Yeah, and when I got to Grayscale, it's like it finally keyed on me who that was. When I called her costume name out, she turned to me and says, "Jeremy, you knew who it was." It's like, yeah, I know. I'm surprised too.
I find it funny how these situations, especially you, Jeremy, that are transforming at every other convention you've been to so far. It's like, oh, I think I know you. Oh, wait, I know you. Oh, hey.
You know what? I am not a handsome...
He's the one getting recognized.
I am not a handsome person, I will say that first. I'm not a fit person, I'll say that second. I get over a lot of my shortcomings by just sheer flirty stupidity. And anybody who knows me has watched it occur. It's amazing.
Wow, yes.
That's one word for it.
Speaking of cosplay, did you manage to catch any of the gatherings there at WonderCon?
I saw the Marvel gathering, I saw the DC gathering, I saw a mini X-Men gathering. There was a Big Hero 6 gathering I wanted to do, but I had already scheduled a photo shoot, so I had to go do that. And even the cosplayers I was with, they saw my puppy dog eyes and just said, "Do you want to go?" It's like, no, you paid for my time.
You paid for me, therefore I must obey.
Yeah. Yeah, but, there was one cosplayer who dressed up like the Wasp. She did such an amazing job that Kotobukiya hired her to hand out stuff during their panel.
Nice.
Oh,
awesome.
And she was small, too. She was like 5 foot nothing, probably didn't weigh more than 100 pounds, so she was just perfect for what they needed.
Wow, that's crazy. But that's awesome, too.
And Monster Mash was there. He's easy to recognize. If you swear you saw Hugh Jackman at a California convention, that's Monster Mash.
That man is ridiculously buff. It's like I saw my AX, and like his Wolverine cosplay is still really, really good.
Oh, do you want me to let you in on a public secret? He's a personal trainer. That's what he is.
Oh,
that
wow.
explains something.
He's a personal trainer and fitness coach. You want to know how he got to look like that? That's why.
Wow, that is awesome. I find it funny and just seeing like some of these people that are, you would seem like normal people. So it's like, oh, I'm my fitness coach, or oh, I you do this other thing. But then like the weekend happens, like WonderCon, it's like, oh, they actually like nerdy stuff like comics and whatnot.
You'd be surprised if you ever met Monster Mash. He is surprisingly soft-spoken, but he sounds a bit like Hugh Jackman when he speaks. So every time I try to introduce myself, it's always awkward because I'd like to shake his hand, but at the same time, it looks like he's gonna fucking gut me.
That's awesome.
So it always ends up a little odd. I think he's tired of looking at me because he just knows it's gonna be uncomfortable.
Awesome. I guess I can see that. What were some of the other things you checked out when you were there at WonderCon?
I went to the Kotobukiya panel. I went to a panel about building Halo armor and a how-to.
Nice.
I was a little panel light because, I had photo shoots kind of well positioned throughout the day. It's a lot harder to focus on panels at this con because the fan community here is extremely active.
Yeah, I mean, they had lots of varied panels. I ended up going to one about censorship, which was probably my favorite, just because that was something that I went to it just going, well, it could be interesting, and ended up finding out a lot more than I thought, because they kind of did a worldwide overview as well as, here in the States, and not just necessarily focusing on comics either, but just books and everything in general from a library standpoint and so forth. Which I don't remember when I was a kid having comic books in my library, but apparently they do now, so more power to people.
Well, we also had that interesting sit-down with the executive producer and director of the Cosplay Dreams 3D documentary.
Yeah, that was really fun. I just wish I could have actually gone to their showing on the Sunday, but that just wasn't going to happen.
I know. Unfortunately, we tried, but we found out after we got the tickets that it was very far off-site. And for us to be able to make that walk, we would have had to have been there late and missed a few other appointments that were already set.
Yeah.
I see. Gotcha. So I was wondering though, Steve, you were talking about the censorship panel. Was that like a fan-made panel, or was that?
No, actually, that was
First thing they did was line everybody up and put a black bar right in front of their junk.
What?
No, actually, it was a funded organization.
I see. Gotcha. Okay.
So
Interesting.
they professionally represent people with legal counsel, all kinds of stuff. So it's the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay.
So
cool.
they actually had a panel all 3 days.
Oh, wow. Was it different topics, or was it the same topic each day?
Pretty much the same topic each day, but they changed up just a little bit.
The Comic Book Legal Defense Fund is a charity, more or less. It takes donations and assists creators and several other individuals in lawsuits, usually revolving around, not censorship, but I say a lot of copyright issues, and trying to make sure that individuals are not hacked out of the process when it comes to comic book creation and copyright.
Well, it is also somewhat censorship as well. They and not even just comic books, but they also, I mean, that's their primary focus, but they also stick up for any kind of First Amendment rule breaking in a way, because anytime you allow somebody to set a precedent legally, then they can start using that precedent in other cases. So they try to be pretty proactive about any form of infringement upon First Amendment rights, just because you don't know what's going to come back and bite you again, later on.
I see. So my next question is, like at every other convention we cover, obviously there are places we go to eat that are kind of the go-to places, the when in doubts, if you will. Now, just out of curiosity, what was the places you went to go eat, like the kind of like when in doubt, this place, or maybe going out, I was like, let's try this other place, for a change.
Pizza Hut.
Yep.
Pizza
The
Hut.
one thing I remember from back in '99 is still there.
The one
But
thing we
much more
remember from
modern.
back in the day!
Wow.
Well, that was also when we totally didn't plan our conventions so well, and we showed up with spending money and no food money. So I think that was like one of the only times I ate that weekend. So it made it a little memorable.
to put in he's not talking about this year, he's talking about 1994. But, no, it's just the Pizza Hut that we knew way back when we were desperate and only had one night's worth of eating food was still there. And the only embarrassing part was, for what you got something that was I'd say on an even day, probably a lower caloric content than most of the things the food trucks were putting out, and it was cheaper.
Yeah, but that was a very interesting thing about this particular convention. I hadn't seen it done before, is they had an area set aside, and they just had, about 7 food trucks.
I actually stood there and counted it on Sunday. It was a dozen.
Oh, wow. Okay, a lot more than even I thought. And selling some
That's what
pretty...
you do when you report at a convention. You do the boring shit.
But yeah, it was selling pretty varied stuff, and not like, just straight up taco truck stuff. I mean, just, what did I have that one time? A little pricey, but a meatball hamburger with some sweet potato fries.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the bacon ranch fried panini.
Yeah. So, lots of different types of food, and pretty steady business, but I wouldn't say, I mean, we didn't have to wait in line, but maybe, 5 minutes.
And don't misunderstand us. We're not sitting here bitching about truck food. It's just, we're both a little up in years and we're concerned about our weight. So calorie count is important right now.
Yeah. So,
much agreed.
They didn't disappoint in that respect, and the Pizza Hut was good. They had IHOP in the area. We ended up eating there. I think they had probably had a Denny's around there somewhere. There's always a Denny's around.
They did. Basically, if you walked half a block in the other direction from where you went, there was the Denny's.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it's right in the Anaheim Disneyland was like right across the street, so of course, they're going to have all those kinds of restaurants and everything.
That's kind of the double-edged sword, though, of Disney being there, is that it's so expensive to eat in the park. The restaurants in the surrounding area know they can charge a couple dollars more than most of the other restaurants within their franchises or within similar cities, and still know that they're cheaper than what's in the park. So,
Yeah.
it's a mas o menos situation. I will say, though, we ate at an off hour, like just before the dinner rush would have started at IHOP, and we finished eating within an hour.
Well,
they were
that's
extremely prompt.
Wow.
We were very prompt. It was rather amazing. The service was good, and the food was very fresh.
Yeah, the waitress there was super friendly.
Waiter, he was a dude.
Well, the waiter, but then the
You mean the
waiter
hostess?
chick. Yeah, the hostess. There we go.
Okay.
Awesome.
Either that or she was flirting with us, one way or the other.
Must be with you. I have a ring, man.
Yeah, well, sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been domesticated.
In terms of did you guys manage to get anything while you're there in the kind of main dealer's hall or the main room of the Wondercon in terms of buying anything?
Oh, no, I actually kept it relatively cheap. I didn't spend near as much as I thought I would. I got a pair of katana chopsticks from the Kotobukiya panel for asking a question that scared the piss out of the guy holding it.
How? Wait, explain.
A lot of people, the guy opened it up in the last third of the panel for a Q&A. And people were getting stuff just for asking questions. And a lot of them were asking just to get shit. So they were asking you for a particular series or for a particular character we're going to be represented in upcoming lines. And a lot of the time his answers were yes, but if, no, but when, relatively along that line. And most of the way through, he finally picked me. And when I dropped my hand, I asked him a straightforward question. What kind of Comic-Con exclusives... no, I asked him... I know you can't answer this question directly, but can you give us any hints as to what kind of Comic-Con exclusives you have coming up for this year? And all of a sudden, half the room went, ooh. And I turned around, honestly, because it's like, did I break a fucking rule? What happened? And the guy, he did answer my question as well as he could. He said there would be 3 exclusives. One will be a Marvel exclusive, one will be a DC exclusive. He said, that's all I can say. And you know what? That's 10 times more than I thought I would actually get out of it. But I got the entire room going.
Wow. Okay. So.
It's like watching a real life version of Twitter explode in the fucking room.
So duly note, don't ask anything of that nature in the next panel that you do.
I don't think they were shunning me. I think they were more like, oh, somebody asked. Somebody had to ask.
Oh, that's great. So after they answered the question, they gave you chopsticks?
Yeah, and after that, the host suddenly ignited into fire. I don't know what the fuck happened, but I'm kidding. He was fine. Nobody killed him for answering my question. But, yeah, I got a pair of katana chopsticks, and it was handed out by that Wasp cosplayer I was talking about earlier, and it was just one of those weird things where I'm staring at it going, hey, I don't know if I could use this.
Seems a little counterproductive.
Yeah.
Not just counterproductive, but everyone keeps forgetting. I have small children, so all of a sudden I have this image of, hey, Dad, look what I can stick in my nose. Don't do that. Give me that.
Yeah. No, that's true. I can totally see them doing that.
Hilarious. That's awesome at the same time, too. Steve, did you get anything when you were there at the con?
No, actually I didn't. I looked really hard. I was very tempted with some t-shirts and ultimately just decided that my paycheck coming up was really kind of needed towards going to rent.
I did buy one thing that was a little unusual for me.
Oh, this is true, yes.
I bought a sketch.
Okay.
An artist I've followed since I was a kid, Todd Knock, had a booth there. I talked about him during the Conover for the Long Beach Comic Expo. He's the one who called me Newman.
Oh, him, yeah.
Yeah. So during the second day of the con, I bought a head sketch and I dropped off a sketchbook, and he looked at me and says, "Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?" I was like, "Oh, thank God, you remembered. My name's not Newman. Cool."
Everything that was wrong in the past is now correct.
Yeah, so I asked for a head sketch, and he finished it. I picked it up on Sunday.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it, but...
Yeah, he did a head sketch of Rachel Summers. It's like one of my favorite X-Men, and it turns out it's one of his favorites, too.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
So I'm thinking about starting an actual sketchbook of just sketches bought by artists at different comic conventions. And that's almost gotten more important now that I've read that Len Wein died a couple days ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a cool thing to start, definitely.
It creates interesting conversations too. It's like I lined up on the second day right after the dealer's hall opened, and it opened half an hour early for those that waited in the actual dealer's hall line. And by the time I got there, even though I was in the second row of people to be released into the room, I was still fifth in line at his table. And right after I got there, I told his wife what I was looking for, and she just asked her husband, "Can you take any more besides this guy?" And he looks at her and says, "I think I can take one more, but after that I'm capped for the day."
Awesome.
The guy behind Jeremy's like, "Yes," and everybody else is like, "Fuck," and walks away.
Steve, I was going to ask you, so what exactly was the item that you were really thinking about buying that you don't want to do it?
It was two different T-shirts. One of them was a Borderlands T-shirt for Marcus, because I love that character in Borderlands, and the other one was a
At Daikamura?
No, it was the
You're about the love pillow, Steve?
no, it was a portal teacher.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was
Awesome.
but yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I nearly bought a couple of things myself, but a lot of the time my thoughts kept floating to the same issues. Okay, in 6 weeks I gotta go to Fanime, and then in 10 weeks I gotta go to Anime Expo, and then in 11 weeks I gotta go to Comic-Con. Something's gotta give.
Yeah, it just... sometimes I wish I worked harder at my job, or at least got more hours.
I like that. Sometimes I wish I worked harder. If I wasn't such a half-ass.
Well, it's not like the work isn't available for me. It's just, I do my time, and then I'm like, do I want to do more? No, I don't. I want to go home.
I do want to give a quick shout-out to the people who I had photo shoots with. Freaking Abby Normal, Ron Gonzalez, Caitlin Gaiman, and Rachel. Really nice people who bought my time during the convention just to get the photos they wanted, and all of them said they were really happy with what was produced. They were super nice about it, and I just want to thank them. Considering I got a lot of acrimony online when I offered to do photo shoots for money from other cosplayers, they spent the time, they spent the money, and they understood where I was coming from. So power to them.
Okay. Speaking of which, how were the photo shoots, by the way?
It was actually fun. We picked a few locations that had us. Each time we had to walk from like one end of the convention center to the other, so I had time to actually chat with them and get to know them and let them know I wasn't just creepy old fart at the con. And
especially since he was leading them to like trees and shit like that. Quick, come to the all-concealing shadows.
Yeah, that was the fun part of the conversation, was because when Steve and I went to breakfast, I saw this really interesting tree around one end of the convention center. So when I met up with them, I always said the same thing. Okay, there's this really interesting tree right around there, but I want to talk to you about this first because it sounds really creepy to go, come with me to this concealed area where no one else can find us.
Wow.
I just said, well, yeah, that sounds cool. It's like, okay, cool. I just wanted to lay that out in Front Street right now. If you feel like you got to call anybody and cover your bases, do it now, please.
Don't worry, there's nothing particularly wrong with any of what I just said.
Yeah, and Abby Normal finished off most of the convention for me with Harley Quinn shoot, and she was dropped off by her dad, who was also in costume, who wanted to meet me. So it's one of those great moments of, yeah, hi, I have no idea how old your daughter is. She asked me to do some photos of her in this tight costume, and I'm 38 and married. How you doing?
Man, that must have been some interesting conversations happening.
It was one of those things where he had that expression of, okay, she's been with this guy before and come out alive and unharmed. What the frick is he about?
Good times. Cool. I'm glad that he had a lot of fun doing the photo shoots. Especially.
I was going to say it's groovy meeting cosplayers in between. There's, we've had discussions before where for some reason that I can't really explain other than maybe the age demographic, comic book cosplayers and anime cosplayers are generally on two different wavelengths for some reason.
I think I get that same feeling too, but go on.
Well, it's one of those things where anime cosplayers tend to be in a rush. If you ask them for a happenstance photo, I'd say somewhere between 30 and 50% of the time they tell you that they're in a hurry to get to something or somewhere, and I have no idea what it is because that's where my interest ends. I'm not going to ask you, what, do you mind stopping? I mean, you're only going to a panel. Can you give me just 2 minutes? That sounds like you're putting them out. In the case of WonderCon, I mean, there was even a Harley Quinn on roller skates that I was, trying real hard not to run in front of because, again, creepy old guy. So, finally I just yelled, "Roller Harley," and she spun around the skates and just said, "Yes, can I get a photo?" "Oh, sure." But you look like you were in a hurry. No.
Just skating along.
And it's like even there was a group of punk X-Men cosplayers, like Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Emma Frost in punk forms, and somebody asked them, "Are you going to the X-Men gathering?" They said, "No, we have this thing we got to go to." But they did stop long enough for me to get photos, and towards the middle of the X-Men cosplay, who showed up?
Oh.
It actually carved out time to come back. So there's just this extra amount of odd patience that is really hard to lock down about comic book cosplayers. Maybe it's because in comic book conventions it's still a relatively new commodity as far as large groups, or maybe it's just because of the general age demographic, but there's just something about them that makes them go, Well, yeah, I want to see what I look like in photos. Come on.
I kind of wonder if it has more to do with the fact of, like, anime, not so much the manga, but anime for sure is kind of feeding towards that short attention span. Whereas, you sit down and you read a comic, usually you're reading the comic. I think it has something to do with that. That just may be me, though.
I would generally say yes, except we got the same kind of patience out of cartoon cosplayers. And yes, anime and cartoons are technically the same thing, but the people who are cosplaying as, like, U.S. and European cartoons would also stop down if you asked them, do you have a couple minutes? Sure. Well, do you mind following me around here just so I can get a clean background? Sure. Half the time when you ask anime fans, if they give you a yes, it's just, would you mind following me this way? Well, I'm in a hurry. If you don't do it right now, I gotta leave. It's like, shit, okay.
Interesting. I mean, like, I have my own theories, too, in terms of how that is. I personally think it's an age thing. I think that at comic book conventions that there's a more older, mature crowd versus, like, an anime conventions. Like, it's for all ages, but, like, it's mostly it's the younger age groups are usually that takes up a majority of the population there at those conventions. And
it may also be the hobbies themselves that have the difference. Anime always turns to the newer fad. It's always the hottest thing is always what's come out recently. In terms of comic books, half of what you go there to find are like the key history events and issues and things that just make fanboys want to drool, or you're going there to seek a signature from one particular individual because he doesn't go to many conventions anymore for whatever reason. It's almost like comic books breeds patience if you're going to use it as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Out of curiosity, was there anything else that you managed to go check out, or was there a particular moment when you were at WonderCon that was just like those weird, kind of strange moments that happened in front of you? And it happens to everyone eventually at conventions, but that happened to you at this WonderCon?
Weird, strange moments.
When we got accepted for press, that was pretty weird.
Yeah.
That was kind of a mind bender because we put in a press application, we never got a response on it, and so I told Steve after we get his badge, I just told him, we'll go to the press desk and just see. They actually had a tag that said on-site press registration. We'll just see what happens. And I gave the lady our information. They had us fill out a form again and handed it to her, and she just said, "Did you fill it out prior?" I said, "Yes." And but 2 very tense, quiet minutes goes by as she keeps typing. I assume she was looking at the website and our credentials and what we sent. And she suddenly looks up at the 2 of us and gives this kind of sideways glance like, "God, you're fucking old." And then she just says, "Okay, I'll approve you for the convention. Give me your badges." It's like, and Steve and I share this look that just says, "Okay, if we hand those over, there's a 50% chance she's just going to call over a security guard and throw us out anyway." So,
Is this a setup?
So we hand over the badges, and she just immediately starts writing on a couple more. She slips them into these new lanyards that say "press" on the bottom of this bright blue ribbon and hands it back to us. And we both just kind of pick up the badges and look at each other like, we being punked?
I was surprised myself too when I got the news. I was like, "What? You guys got accepted? How?"
No, that's the exact same thing we said to each other.
Wow, that is interesting. I kind of wonder what exactly kind of tipped her off to like okay, these guys are press. All right, sure.
I couldn't say for sure. I was out of business cards by then, so I couldn't even tell you. I will say the moment where I was sure when I was walking around I have officially arrived at this convention was when I hit the Ultra Sabers booth in the exhibit hall.
Nice.
When you're staring at all these mock-ups of custom lightsabers and one of them just happens to be the hilt and crossguard from the Sword of Omens, you look at that with a lightsaber beam coming out of it, you just say, "Okay, this is a goddamn convention."
That was the minute he's like, "Yes, I'm home." It's funny because for me when it comes to conventions, it's like whenever I'm trying to find a convention or whenever I feel like I'm trying to find where exactly it is, I'll eventually see a cosplayer walking towards it, or I'll see several cosplayers doing some dumb shit. And I'm like, okay, it's that direction. Yeah, and then I get there, it's like, okay, I'm home. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what Steve's impression of the convention was, but mine from walking around is that for a comic book convention, for a Comic-Con convention, this was an extremely laid-back place. I don't think walking was ever impossible, even when the really busy times happen, you could still navigate this place without stopping and going, come on, move, come on, move, come on, move, come on, move.
Some of that had to do with the fact that they really kind of cracked down on the ghosting. They had clear fencing laid off, and everything. They were totally checking everybody's badges, doing all that kind of stuff, but they weren't like really intrusive, they weren't like frisking you or, patting you down, you flashed your badge, it was good enough, okay, go on through, but,
He's absolutely right. They set up points at the 3 major places to approach the convention center where anybody without a badge could not cross, and they did it with so much space that there was still plenty of room for people to gather up groups, that everything ahead of the fountain was badge-only zone, so they really didn't have to check too much at the individual doors. They're already looking for you well ahead of the time you actually got to the building.
Yeah, and yet they left at least 20 to 30 feet, of available space just, before you actually hit the building. So, it wasn't really, cramped or anything. Plus, just with the way that everything was set up, all the food carts and everything were outside of that area. You didn't really interfere with any other hotel traffic. And then you still had another fountain, pretty much mirroring the one that was blocked off down at the other end. So, you weren't even really ruining people's, being able to mingle if they didn't have a badge.
No, there were some selfish dinguses down there, though, that were hogging the other fountain because they were taking photos, and I don't think they had badges themselves.
True. But
interesting. So it seems like they were smart enough. They did it in a way where it was smart enough, but at the same time not overly aggressive at the same time.
Well, Wondercon last year, the only badge-only zones were after you had already entered the building. Just the areas of like the exhibit hall and the panels were the only places that were badge-only. So again, this was Comic-Con thinking ahead of their problems. So before crowding really became an issue, they already set a buffer zone where only people with badges could get through. Before crowding became a super issue.
Yeah. Plus all the extra space and everything that they got this year, it was a good experience. It was colorful.
And he kept the religious protesters away from the front door.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. Although I feel like at this point, like it feels like it's not a convention without some sort of religious person on the front protesting against something.
Oh, this crew
Even when they start trying way too hard.
Yeah, there's the usual yellow sign protesters, and anybody who's been to a lot of conventions knows exactly what we're talking about. Except one of them unfurled this large white banner that said something about the Hulk does not smash sin or something of that nature. And I remember just looking at it going, you don't know the Hulk, do you? Because if there was a god or a devil and you put them both in front of the Hulk, he's not going to pick which one he smashes. He's just going to hammer the both of them into the fucking ground.
Puny god.
Puny gods indeed. Ah, that's hilarious.
Yeah. That's definitely a case of somebody what he thinks is pandering to the masses, even though he doesn't understand the character he decided to put on his little banner.
Yeah.
Little banner. That's almost a joke in and of itself.
You know what I want to start looking for? Just because I feel like they're all gonna. I kind of want to see some creativity out of these guys. Like I want to see some something that's more creative than what they've been doing for the past. I don't know, ever since conventions started, anime conventions started, or any conventions for that matter.
I was talking with one guy. He just said, so, we need to troll these guys. And somebody showed up in a Jawas costume and said that Darth Vader is Lord on it. Sign. He was standing out there, and I said, that's a pretty good one. My only idea was, I know your minding will save you, Xavier 116. And somebody turned around and said, make it! Fucking nuts! And I said, it's not fair because I already had a plan. Well, what was that? I want to make a yellow sign that says mutants go home and dress up in a Hydra costume. That's even better. Make it!
Nice. Awesome. So, funny enough, I want to say, days after you guys come back and put up photos or worked on WonderCon coverage, there was a news post that was posted up about WonderCon days after saying that it is moving from its Anaheim Convention Center to the downtown LA Convention Center, which AX and Kamikaze and other conventions are now being held at.
You should have seen the fan response to that announcement, man. They hated that.
At WonderCon?
Yeah.
That announcement was on the final day of WonderCon, yeah.
What was the response?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's why I missed it.
The response in the building, I don't know, because, Sunday was a very busy day for me, so I was out and about. I read about it. I got the news alert while I was on my way home, and I couldn't fully read it till after I got home, but almost all the responses online were just, why? It was so perfect where it was. You don't need to do this. LA's going to ruin it. God, why do I have to go to that fucking building again?
So I'm curious about your guys' thoughts on it, because I personally think it's a bad move. I think that what they have in Anaheim is great, and having it be moved to the convention center in LA, which we have numerous times talked about, like that place it needs to be renovated, it needs to be fixed, and there's still stuff that still needs to be needs.
Well, that's the inherent problem, is that they're not moving because they're unhappy with Anaheim. They're moving because as of this April, they broke ground on the expansion for the Anaheim Convention Center. A whole new building they're putting adjacent, but they're going to connect it to the main building via an overhead bridge.
I see.
So, and the other issue is during spring of 2016 is when they're going to start work on a section of the existing building so they can build that bridge. So, unfortunately, WonderCon would fall right in that area where they would be doing the maximum amount of work and cutting off a section of the existing building.
So then my question, and I'm not sure if it depends on what happens, but what are the chances that it goes to LA, it does well, and it doesn't come back to Anaheim like it did from San Francisco to Anaheim?
20%. 20%. The existing fan base is already saying this is a bad move, but they understand why they're doing it. It's also known that WonderCon did not sign a multi-year contract with Los Angeles. They signed a one-year contract. So even they're not interested in staying long-term at this point. The other thing is that there's already a group of people who were saying, I was thinking about going to WonderCon, but since it's going to LA, I'm not going. Despite what Anime Expo is doing down there, the Los Angeles Convention Center, it seems like among Southern California cosplayers, does have a pretty dismal reputation between the age of the building and the suck-ass disposition of the LACC staff.
Right, definitely. Out of curiosity.
And I also have to say that, just the area surrounding it doesn't really lend itself very well to that either.
No. No, I'm a little curious about what they're going to do about gatherings, because the Los Angeles Convention Center staff, in regards to smaller conventions like Kamikaze, has already moved several larger gatherings, even though they aren't technically blocking a whole lot of stuff. So this is going to be a hell of a curiosity, and although the LACC probably sees a decent amount of fan conventions over the course of the year, I don't know if it's turnover or what, but they really don't have an idea as to what people do and how to treat them.
I see. Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I'm hopefully that it's only going to be temporary. I hope it doesn't become another case where it moved from San Francisco to Anaheim and then stayed there. But
I seriously doubt it. I'm sure a lot of people are saying, well, this makes it almost a sure thing that Comic-Con's going to move to LA. I think Comic-Con's listening to LA's pitches is about the same thing as what the NFL teams do. You know what? If you don't give me what I need, there's this group of idiots over there in Los Angeles that's actually trying to get us to come over there. Maybe you'll actually listen to what I want for once.
Definitely. Shout outs to two LA teams, NFL teams coming soon. Aside from that point, though, we'll have to wait and see how things turn out. And this is happening next year, correct?
Yeah, it's 2016. It is a one-year contract, and I just don't see this being a long-term change, because the building, like I said, Los Angeles is technically a large building. It's not as much convention space as Anaheim has, even if they use the entirety of the building. It's a non-contiguous building, which also makes it kind of a bummer to move between places for your exhibit hall. And then there's just the plain idea of how rude the staff is. I don't see this being permanent. I think Comic-Con was pretty sure what they had in Anaheim. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone so far as to change the nature of the convention from last year to this year.
Okay. Well, time will only tell. Hopefully, things work out, and
hopefully this is just a one-year thing, because if this does go to Los Angeles, it could be the thing that does end up moving it back down to San Francisco numbers, frankly, from all I'm hearing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean that's the ultimate telltale in and of itself, though. If they lose membership because they move to this location, that they're definitely not staying.
Definitely. I think the one thing is, and it's universal with many things, if not any, voting with your wallets. And if people show that they're not going because it's location, then that kind of is a good indication what exactly people stand on where.
The, the only advantage to this particular move is that if Steve and I manage to go next year, I can actually show him the Residence Inn.
This is true.
Funny. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me for this podcast to talk about everything WonderCon.
No problem.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed my time there, so talking about it is not an issue.
So, before we go with the rigmarole of where they can find you on the internet and whatnot, I forgot to ask. So, final thoughts on WonderCon, pros, cons, etc.
I honestly don't have a lot of cons. Again, Comic-Con did its incredible job because when it comes down to it, the convention staff only really have one thing that they need to provide to you. Two things: space and organization. And if there's anything that Comic-Con does well, it's those two things. They understand that the exhibit hall is interesting, but they're not the ones that provide the goods. They understand that panels are interesting, but they're not the ones generally conducting it. So they have focused really hard to make the show better than you think it's going to be next year, which is ultimately how conventions grow.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to the staff. I personally witnessed one staff member get berated by somebody attending there and it called him a racist. And dude totally kept his calm, went over, addressed some other people, pointed out to the guy, no, he's not just singling him out, you need to follow the rules, so on and so forth. And, I'm just sitting there feeling embarrassed for, this poor staff member. And, the guy handled it extremely professionally. And, I think that was a pretty good representation of the convention as a whole.
And right after he handled it professionally, he dragged the man outside, beat him to death, and shoved his billy club up his ass. So,
well, there goes that.
I'm kidding.
Thank you guys again for enlightening us about everything WonderCon. Where can they find you on the internet?
We do a weekly comic book news-based podcast called The Rolling 20s that you can find on Mission Star Podcast. We have a Twitter at The Rolling 20s. We are on iTunes and on Stitcher. And next time I'm going to be seen in massive public will be Fanime. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the Cosplay Wrestling Federation panel. So,
yes, definitely.
Yes, I definitely have to attend this one.
You have never been, have you, Steve?
No, I have not yet.
Oh man. I'll have to sit.
I'm kind of hoping that the Freaky Fish guy makes it, just because I saw him wandering around the ALA. But I kind of want to see his character. But at the same time, I also know what Jeremy plans on going as, and I just have to go to watch this.
Oh my freaking god!
The cool thing about the panel is that it's actually date and time is actually at a relatively a good time, but also something that a wrestling event would be. Sunday night, 9 p.m. I believe is when it's going to happen.
7
p.m. Okay.
It's 7 to 9.
7 to 9. So yeah, like I'm excited. I want to see what happens. Last year's Fanime's wrestling panel was ridiculously good. It was awesome. So I cannot wait for this year's. Who knows what might happen? Who knows?
Yeah. Could be another Freaky Fish guy.
We could see the return of Dio. That'd be awesome. So I was gonna say, you can follow this podcast on our website on missionstartpodcast.com, as well as iTunes and Stitcher. You can follow me personally on Twitter if you want at Defective Naruto.
Do it.
And definitely, like Jeremy said, as he discussed earlier, you can check out their podcast, The Rolling 20s, which is also on our website as well as iTunes and Stitcher, which is more a comic-based, more entertainment-based podcast than this podcast is. And aside from that, we will be the next big thing for us in terms of convention-wise would be Fanime. And this is something else I can't remember the moment that we're covering. But yes, Fanime is going to be the big one coming up, and a lot of us are going to be there. So if you happen to walk around and you see any of us, or if you see Jeremy especially, come say hi. We're pretty friendly.
Yeah, but just make sure you don't do it in a blind spot. I kick.
So anyway,
If you find me there, just be prepared for awkward silence, because, yeah.
so with that, we will see